Hey, this time what I'm going to be talking about is the second part to my Frankenstein review. So, Frankenstein, Mary Shelley, and specifically the 1818 edition, which you can see right there. Because as was discussed in part one, there are some significant changes between the 1818 first version and the revised 1831 edition. Um, so essentially, what this video is going to be is not just my review of the story. This is post talking about it in my British literature class. So this is sort of like after having to do some close readings and more of a filtered response and not so much of just a pure reaction. Um, so there's one thing I want to do specifically, which is going to be kind of weird. I wanted to show an example of the deep, rich language in the novel and the way that it lends itself to multiple interpretations and some deep interpretations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a passage that I've already had to examine. I examined in class um, just myself, and everyone in the class had to examine it and annotate it and come up with some like a paragraph describing it. So I'll read you the passage, and then I will tell you what I got out of it. And this will just serve as an example, one, both of kind of how to examine passages for people who might not necessarily read that way, and also specifically for this book as an example of the kind of rich language that's so open for interpretation. And I'm sure you could get into the faults in my interpretation. Obviously, I'm not a genius. It's probably open to a lot of BS. Um, and that's all part of it. So let's get started so I don't make this unbearably long for you. So I'm just going to read the passage for you. It was on a dreary night of November that I beheld the accomplishment of my toils. With an anxiety that almost amounted to agony, I collected the instruments of life around me, that I might infuse a spark of being into the lifeless thing that lay at my feet. It was already 1 in the morning. The rain pattered dismally against the panes, and my candle was nearly burnt out. When, by the glimmer of the half-extinguished light, I saw the dull yellow eye of the creature open. It breathed hard, and a convulsive motion agitated its limbs. How can I describe my emotions at this catastrophe, or how delineate the wretch whom with such infinite pains and care I had endeavored to form? His limbs were in proportion, and I had selected his features as beautiful. Beautiful! Great God! His yellow skin scarcely covered the work of muscles and arteries beneath. His hair was a lustrous black and flowing, his teeth of a pearly whiteness, but these luxuriances only formed a more horrid contrast with his watery eyes, that seemed almost of the same color as the dun white sockets in which they were set, his shriveled complexion and straight black lips. So that's the end of the passage. I'll do a type up of that, and I'll put it in the description down below, so that you can read it, because I know sometimes it's kind of hard to understand me. So anyway, the things I highlighted in my annotation were the word dreary, and a note that kind of brings to mind the light of the afternoon or the evening. They collected the instruments of life, I underlined, and with a question, electricity or light, because I already had this idea where in film interpretations of Frankenstein, it's often always the same, and we all think we know the story of Frankenstein as electricity, a lightning bolt, or in the case of the Kenneth Branagh version, electric eels. However, the only word Victor actually says is the spark of life. I might infuse a spark of being into the lifeless thing, which spark might imply electricity, but is not explicit. And then I underlined that a candle was nearly burnt out. I also underlined the glimmer of the half-extinguished light, dull yellow eye, anyway, yellow skin. So, without you really looking at that here, I can give you a quick glimpse. kind of what that looked like. So just notes, really. So in my interpretation, in my little paragraph, essentially I drew the conclusion that perhaps just looking at the way light is used in that passage, that Victor draws like the spark, and spark could be meaning electricity or could be meaning light, and that in the instant where his creature is given life, the candle becomes half extinguished, which to me implies maybe there's some connection between the candle and the light or the heat energy and the creature, and then the creature's yellow eye, um, you know, in the same instance, his yellow eye opens, which is his eyes are later in the passage described as being the same kind of putrid flesh white color as his skin. So why in that first instance are the eyes yellow? And I then also extrapolated that perhaps it's implied that if you can go under the assumption that the eyes are somehow the gateway to the soul, which is a common belief, that Victor was only capable of providing his creature with a half-extinguished soul, based on the candle only being half-extinguished. Anyway, I know that probably sounds crazy, and honestly, it kind of is. But I thought it was interesting, and that's what struck me as I read that passage. But again, this isn't as I'm reading the novel initially. Sometimes that happens. Usually, this is like you're reading it later, looking for stuff specifically, or you have like an idea of something, so you're kind of looking for stuff to back you up. Anyway, I'll shut up. I have my first part of Frankenstein that has more of a review in it. I stand by my belief that Victor is an intolerable, self-centered ass. The creature is the true hero of this story. Even though he does really evil things, Victor's a moron. And I was glad I got to talk about some of the fun parts of talking about literature and interpretations. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully it wasn't too crackpot for everyone. And I'm sorry this video is so long. But as always, good reading and have a good day.